Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Brain History. Today we're doing another reaction video. We are reacting to a video called The Best Preserved Roman Colony in the World. I've never heard of this channel and I've never seen this video. It just looks interesting and I like the Roman Empire. So I'm sure there's something really cool that we can learn today. Let's get into it. Oh, and I will leave the original video link in the description below, so go ahead and check them out too after you get done with this.
In the scorching red sands of Algeria, on the edge of the Sahara, lies the best example of a Roman veteran colony anywhere. This was an entire city built specifically for veteran soldiers. It tells us a lot about how such colonies look like and what it was like for the veterans living there. So how did Rome treat its veterans? And what rewards did they get once they finished their military service?
So, about 2 years ago, my wife and we took a trip to Rome, and incredible trip. But during the trip, I heard about Ostia Antica, so I took a couple hours to go visit it, and it was incredible. It looks a lot like this, actually. It was an ancient port town that was used by the Romans to supply the city of Rome itself, but they have it completely preserved the way it was whenever Rome existed. Obviously, the buildings and stuff aren't very intact. It looks a lot like this, but when you're walking the streets, you're walking real Roman streets, and the houses, the foundations are still there, and there's like a bathhouse, and you can walk and see the floor, which has an incredible mosaic on it. It's incredible. But these Roman cities, they were built very, very, very well. As you can see in this picture, they followed a grid system just like modern cities do. It's incredible what they were able to accomplish in the ancient world.
Timgad is the best example of a Roman colony because of its perfectly preserved grid plan. This was the typical urban planning model the Romans employed in their colonies. It's orderly, rational, and cookie cutter.
Now, Rome did not look like this. Rome did not have a grid plan, at least it may have in the outer parts of it, but the earlier Rome part was not. It's just chaotic. Streets go everywhere. The streets are very narrow. Rome was always suffering from congestion and traffic and all that kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of the same way if you go to Rome today. If you go to Rome, the streets are just very narrow. I remember one time we were walking down the street next to the Pantheon, and we're walking down the street, and a car started coming down the street, and everybody just had to put their backs to the wall so the car could go by. It's not very well planned city, which of course they weren't expecting cars to be driving down the streets when they built it, but this city like this is very well planned out. They knew that, hey, this is a city, we're going to build it to be very efficient with the space. It's pretty cool to see how they developed over time.
Timgad was founded by the Emperor Trajan in 100 AD. Trajan was the emperor who expanded the Roman Empire to its greatest geographical extent. He is most famous for his wars in Dacia, in modern-day Romania, and his wars against the Parthians, Rome's rival empire to the east.
Fun fact about the Parthian Empire. He's right, it's a big rival. It was one of the only empires the Romans just could not conquer. They invaded them multiple times, couldn't ever defeat them, at least not completely. And one Roman emperor actually went to war with the Parthians, got defeated, got captured, and became a footstool to the Parthian emperor, which is pretty crazy.
As a soldier himself, he would have understood the importance of rewarding veterans for their service to the empire. I'll tell you more about that later in the video, but first I want to orient you to the site. The square boundary was well defined, with 3 gates and 2 main roads, the Decumanus going east-west, and the Carda going north-south, which was typical in many Roman colonies. At Timgad though, the Carda doesn't go all the way through, but terminates at the Forum, where the 2 streets intersect. Every Roman city had a Forum, the public square, and every Roman city had a theater as well, so this area in the center of town was the public district where everyone gathered. At the western gate is the Arch of Trajan, a classic Roman triumphal arch. So you really see that Timgad was modeled in the image of Rome.
That's incredible.
The dimensions are 380 by 330 meters. Walking from the arch, it would take you less than 5 minutes to cross the town,
Wow.
so it wasn't very big. But you can see on Google Earth that the town developed outside its original boundaries once the main square was full. In the southwest corner is a large temple complex dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. It was a very large temple complex for such a small city, and was a symbol of Timgad's allegiance to the Roman state religion and authority.
Now, one thing I want to say, if you can see in the back this big amphitheater, whenever we went to Italy, we got to see one of these amphitheaters in person at Ostia Antica, and it is incredible how well built they are. They are engineered precisely to be perfect for acoustics, for plays or whatever the show they're putting on. You can stand on the stage and whisper, and my wife, who was at the very top of the stands, could hear every word I was saying. And she was on the left side, and there was another guy on the far right side, and he could hear everything I was saying. You can stand anywhere on the stage, and at any point, anyone in the stands can hear you. It's amazing how they build it. They didn't have speakers and all the cool sound systems that we have today, obviously. So they just built it to make it work, and it works perfectly.
There were also several bathhouses, and even a library, which indicates that learning and culture were esteemed values even here on the edge of the empire. Timgad had all the trappings of a typical Roman city. The library was identified with an inscription saying what it is. It's only one of 2 libraries that survived to us from the Roman world, the other one being in Ephesus.
I didn't know that. That's
I'll leave a
crazy.
link to one of my Ephesus videos at the end.
It's crazy with how big the Roman Empire was that we only have 2 libraries, because they had many. It's crazy that we only have 2 today.
This Roman urban planning model was standardized and scalable, so it could be replicated anywhere. Kind of like how a McDonald's in Rome looks the same as a McDonald's in New York.
Exactly the same
Well,
as Rome.
with a
as
few exceptions.
McDonald's.
Another colony founded by Trajan was Colonia Ulpia Traiana in Germany. You can see Trajan in the name. It had a similar formula, with a square shape and grid pattern, although not nearly as well preserved as Timgad.
That's so cool they still have a Colosseum. That's amazing.
This plan was based on the square military camps called castra. But the colonies were larger, proper towns. This other colony was also in Germany. It eventually became the city of Cologne. Now you know the origin of that city's name. Rome started founding colonies from the moment it began expanding in Italy in the early Republican period. It was a way to settle Roman citizens in the newly conquered territories. Today, many cities in Italy still preserve the Roman grid pattern of the colonies they once were. A few examples include Florence, Bologna,
Wow.
Parma, and Cremona. These were frontier towns when they were founded. So the concept of an urban grid pattern is not modern, but an ancient one.
That's kind of crazy that a frontier town was Florence, Italy, which is in Italy. So they had a frontier town in Florence, and then a couple hundred years later, they're gonna have frontier towns all the way in the UK and in Africa, Spain. It's crazy how fast they expanded and how far
The
they
first
went.
colony outside Italy was named Italica, in modern-day Spain, founded during the Second Punic War.
There's another
The
Colosseum.
name Italica was not a coincidence. It was a little piece of Italy abroad. You can see the grid pattern here too. Interestingly, Italica was Trajan's hometown, as well as Hadrian's, so our boy Trajan hailed from a colony himself. In the imperial period, the
And that was true. As the empire progressed and the older it got, it came to a point where no one really understood what a Roman was anymore. You could be a Roman citizen and never even visit Rome. And that was something that was really important to the Romans early on in the empire. Roman citizens should be from Rome. And then eventually that law changed and everyone that was in the empire became a Roman citizen. And a lot of historians try to argue that that's when the Roman Empire died, when the value of Roman citizenship kind of became pointless. I don't think it really is the point that it died, but it's kind of interesting that people started just becoming Roman, even though they had never been to Rome.
the
And they
cities
started getting emperors that had never been to Rome.
colonies to settle veterans became more common, because the army in the imperial period was a proper career, so these veterans needed to be taken care of. It was a win-win strategy for Rome. It could use these colonies to maintain a Roman presence in the frontier regions, remind the locals who was in charge, and reward its veterans at the same time. Trajan founded Timgad specifically for veterans of the 3rd Augustan Legion. Not the entire legion was retiring at the same time at Timgad, just the older guys were. A Roman legion had up to 6,000 soldiers. If you were a Roman citizen, you would have been placed in the heavy infantry units, known as the legionaries. If you were not a citizen, it usually meant you came from the provinces, and you were placed in the auxiliary units, which had various specializations like archery, cavalry, and light infantry.
How would you like to be a soldier for the Roman Empire, fight for decades probably, finally retire, and they stick you out in a city in the middle of the desert? I don't know if they got a choice to where they would want to go, but if I got the choice, it would definitely not be living in that colony because it looks pretty nasty over there.
These
Well, not
specialized
nasty, but just
auxiliary
hot
units
and
supported the
sucky.
heavy infantry. New recruits signed up for 25 years. It was obviously a hard and dangerous life, and your chance of successfully finishing your 25 years was not high. But if you did make it, and you were lucky enough to retire to the Sunshine State, then this is what you'd get.
The Sunshine State.
Full Roman citizenship, to you and your family.
Yeah, see, that was really important. Roman citizenship could unlock a lot. It could allow you your way into politics, wealth. You get a lot. Also, they would pay a lot of the Roman soldiers with land. So if you retired, you would get land, which could make you a farmer and would also give you wealth and was important for politics. Because the more land you had, the more influence and power you got.
That is, if you signed up as a non-citizen. To be a Roman citizen was a big deal, so if you were not, then the army was a good way to achieve this much sought-after status.
You can see why it became a problem when citizenship was just given to everybody.
Of course they didn't have passports, but you did receive a Roman military diploma, which was a bronze document stating that you were honorably discharged and have been granted Roman citizenship by the emperor.
That's pretty
At
cool.
Timgad, you received a plot of land outside the town in order to farm. I know the area doesn't
You
look like
got
good
land.
land to grow anything in, but back then, North Africa was a lot greener and more fertile.
That's true. I
You
didn't
also
think of
received
that.
land inside
That's a point I didn't think about. Yeah, North Africa has become more of a desert the longer it's gone. Like for example, the area around Jerusalem used to be really green. Now it looks like this. So that's true. I guess if I was a Roman soldier, this would look very different. So I guess it wouldn't matter.
the town, where you could build a house.
Doesn't look
If we
too
look
great
at the
today
map of
anymore though.
Timgad again, we can see that there are the public spaces like the Forum and Theater, and all these equally sized residential lots. These were the lots given to the veterans to build their houses on. I counted 100 of them and measured their size. They're all 20 meters by 20 meters, which was probably too big for a house. So most likely these were apartment blocks with 2 or 3 levels, what the Romans called insulae. Each insula would have housed multiple families, so it's possible that several veterans would team up and build an insula together, then their families shared it. The equally sized lots suggest a fairly egalitarian community, where everyone was more or less equal. Considering how small the town was, I can't imagine a big gap between rich and poor. Also, considering all these guys came out of the military together, where they spent years bonding, that it was a tight community where everyone knew everyone. If you didn't want the farming land and just wanted cold hard cash, then you would have received a lump sum of money that you could invest in a small business. And as a veteran, you were also relieved of paying certain taxes. Considering all those benefits, maybe it was worth it to sign up for 25 years of military service. It was an avenue for social mobility, especially if you came from the lower classes.
Don't look in the top right. Ignore that.
So after 2 tours in Parthia, 3 tours in Dacia, and maybe 1 in Britannia, you finally got set up in a small town where you knew everyone, out in the provinces and close to nature. You could even learn a new craft. For sure you'd be better off here than in the filth and congestion of Rome. And unlike Rome, the crime rate in Timgad was probably 0. After work, you could spend your afternoons going to the baths, the theater, or the library. Maybe I'm romanticizing it a bit, but an inscription found at Timgad reads in Latin, to hunt, to bathe, to play, to laugh, that is life. It gives the impression that this was a happy place. And these are
Are you telling me the Romans had their own version of Live, Laugh, Love?
mosaics also found in Timgad. They are evidence that the city had a lavish urban environment.
Have a good bad.
This mosaic of Neptune dates from the 3rd century, which is when the city
This is very similar to the mosaic I saw in Italy. When you go to the bathhouse in Ostia Antica, you see a mosaic of this. It very similar actually. It still had the seahorses and everything. It's pretty cool.
peaked. By that point, it developed into something more than just a veteran colony. It became a proper town. Families would have become established and successful from exporting agricultural products to Rome, and from various commercial activities. And economic growth always leads to population growth. And it reached an estimated population of 15,000. But the sweet idyllic life didn't last. And compared to other Roman cities, Timgad's lifespan was relatively short.
I wonder what happened. Buried by the sands.
In the 5th century, the Vandals, a Germanic tribe, invaded the empire and conquered their way all the way down to Iberia, and then into North Africa, where they set up their own Vandal kingdom with Carthage as its capital. In 455, they set sail for Rome and sacked it.
It's kind of crazy. They had 3 Punic Wars where Rome established their dominance of the Mediterranean by defeating Carthage, and it took them decades to beat the Carthaginians in these wars. They finally destroyed Carthage, claimed victory, dominated the Mediterranean, just for them to eventually fall by these Germanic tribes conquering Carthage and then using it as a base to sack Rome. It's kind of how it just comes full circle. It's crazy.
Rome had already been sacked by the Goths in 410, which was a much more famous event, but the Vandal sack was actually longer and robbed the city of much more treasure. For 2 weeks straight, they pillaged through the city, destroying buildings and looting valuables. It is said that they also looted the spoils from the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which had been sitting in Rome for almost 4 centuries. The Vandal sack is where we get the word vandalism, although the term was coined much later, in the French Revolution, by a Frenchman who witnessed the destruction of much artwork during that time. This Frenchman harked back to the Vandal sack, which was one of the last nails in the coffin of the Western Roman Empire. 20 years later, the Western Empire would fall. The Vandals didn't just vandalize Rome, they also vandalized Timgad.
It's interesting how many words in the English language we have from things that happened in the Roman Empire. Like, for example, when you win a battle and you lose a lot of troops, but you win, they call it a Pyrrhic victory because of a Greek general named, I believe his name is Pyrrhus or Pyrrhic. But he invaded Italy and then won many battles against the Romans, but every battle he won, he lost a lot of soldiers. So they called it a Pyrrhic victory, and it still stands to this day. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot more than that, but that's just an example.
Their kingdom in North Africa lasted for 100 years, until 535, when the Byzantine Emperor Justinian sent the brilliant general Belisarius to take back North Africa for the Eastern Romans.
Belisarius is one of my favorite generals in history. Belisarius is fascinating. We'll have to do another reaction video to a video about Belisarius. He's incredible.
This reconquest of North Africa dissolved the Vandalic kingdom, and Timgad experienced a revival, but is a fully Christian city. But the final destruction of the city was when the Arabs conquered North Africa from the Byzantines, around 700 AD. The Arabs probably didn't care much about this isolated place, and didn't bother to build their own city on top. So Timgad became irrelevant, and was abandoned completely by the 8th century. As the region became more and more desertified, Timgad slowly got covered up with sand, which preserved it, and it lay buried and forgotten for 1,000 years. It was discovered in 1765 by a Scottish explorer named James Bruce, but the site only began to get excavated in the 1880s by the French who controlled Algeria.
It would be so cool to be one of these guys that discover one of these Roman ruins or just any ancient empire's ruins. It would be incredible just to walk out in a field, see something, dig it up, and find a whole city. That's so cool.
And they excavated it until the 1960s. It's thanks to their work that we have this site available to us today. In 1992, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a priceless archaeological gem that gives us an invaluable window into what a typical veteran colony looked like. A miniature Rome on the edge of the Sahara.
That was a really cool video. I really like that. I love archaeology and finding old ancient cities and stuff like that. So this fascinates me. I hope you thought it was interesting. I learned a lot in this video. I definitely recommend checking this channel out and watching this video to give them credit too. And like I said, I'll leave it in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.